Hey everybody. So I want to address this Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and I'm going to apologize for the title. It's a little clickbaity, right? Like we have this Johnson & Johnson vaccine that just got approved, but we've had the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines for a while. And so people already perceive that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is inferior. I mean, people are concerned about this. In fact, I just heard City of Detroit said they don't want it. They're just going to say, no, thank you. We don't want any of this vaccine. So what is this all about? I mean, is this reasonable? How would a rational person approach this issue? And I'm just going to go through my evolution on this subject. So here, this is an example of what I'm talking about. The mayor of Detroit, he says he doesn't want it. He'd rather have no vaccine than to use the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So is he justified? Well, let me tell you what, I get where he's coming from. So let's talk about this. Because there's a right answer here, but it's not the one that might make intuitive sense depending on how much information that you've absorbed about this. This is the start of the trouble, is the top line statistic that the J&J vaccine is 66% effective. So let's just, we'll make a thing, effectiveness. So J&J is 66% effective. Now, Pfizer, Moderna, they are in the 90s, right? So here, Pfizer is 94% effective. And Moderna is 95% effective. So the natural question is, why would we want a vaccine that's 66% effective when the alternatives are 94 and 95% effective? I think most people are pretty reasonable. They're not going to say, look, I'm going to hold out for Moderna because it's 95% and Pfizer is inferior because it's 94. I mean, I think most people are reasonable enough to know that this really, like this 1% difference here is meaningless, right? I mean, it's just, these are based on the clinical trials, and if they jumble up the population a little bit differently, it could end up that Pfizer is 1% better or whatever. And differences in individual human physiology are going to have a much bigger impact on this than 94 and 95. So let's just say these two are tied for first place, right? Can we agree that based on what we've got so far, let's just say these are tied for first place. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I think that's the way you need to think of these two. And based on what we know so far, it all pretty much seems like Johnson & Johnson's a distant third place. So, people aren't dumb. When it comes to our health, I think people should be free to ask questions. You should not just accept a medical intervention because somebody told you to do it. You should, as an intelligent and educated person in the world, you should ask questions, and then people should address your questions until you feel comfortable with the medical intervention that's being done. So the obvious question here is, should we take the J&J vax instead of waiting for a better one? Okay, now just throughout this video, I'm going to refer to these as the mRNA vaccinations. It has to do with the way that they produce antibodies. And so they both use roughly the same technology. The technology they use is related to messenger RNA. So these are, I'm just going to refer to these generically as the NRA vaccines. And you can see they're very close. Most of the trials show them behaving pretty similarly. So as far as I know, there's really not much that's true for one that isn't true for the other, because it's kind of sort of like the same technology here, right? So this is like going to the store and you buy salt from Morton's or you buy Kroger salt. It's probably the same salt. I don't know if that's a great analogy, but these are just very similar, and I'll refer to these as mRNA vaccines. And I'll just refer to, this is like non-replicating virus delivered, blah, 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 blah. I'll just refer to this as the Johnson & Johnson vax. So if you hear me comparing mRNA to J&J, just realize this is what I'm doing. I'm comparing the two that appear to be much better to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, I consider this to be a very straightforward, common sense question. This is a question that, if you're not asking this question, I actually judge you a little bit, right? You should be aware of what's going on with anything that happens with your body. So if you're not asking this question, I mean, really? Like, you don't care? And so keep in mind, I'm a very pro-vaccine person. Like, on social media, I will unfriend people who don't believe in vaccines. I'm fine with differences of opinion. I just am not fine with stupid people who kill other people. And so I'm fine with questioning what the experts tell us, but you need to ask intelligent questions. So I'm very pro-vaccine. These are truly a miracle of modern science. Our lives would be so different if not for vaccines. But it doesn't mean that I'm just going to blindly take any vaccine, right? I mean, I know I definitely want a vaccine against COVID, but I want to explain something here. This is not inconsequential. I mean, look, you don't have to be a math genius to know that 66% does not compare to 94 or 95% effective, right? And so here's where, oh my Lord, did they mess this up? The messaging on this is so horrible. I don't even know where to begin. So what's the first thing they say? The first thing they say is J&J trials took place later and at other locations than the mRNA trials. That's true. That's the first thing they say. Second thing they say is the U.S. numbers bring the J&J numbers closer to the mRNA numbers. And then the third thing they say is the J&J vax is very effective at preventing death. This reminds me of that, what was it in The Hangover, where Ken Jeong goes, "But did you die?" Right? Like, well, we're concerned with more than just death. So, and they also point out that it's effective at preventing hospitalization. But again, here, I mean, personally, and I'll get into this in a bit, these are not really my issues. I don't care about this. So, and then number 5, they'll say, we have a pandemic. You should take whatever vaccine is offered. Oh my Lord. This is where you can tell that these are people of science and not people of marketing or of human behavior or just normal human reactions to things. Why would they say this? This is a terrible thing. This is basically just saying, they might as well just say, Johnson and Johnson, I can't even spell, vax is crappy. It's all you deserve. Shut up and take what we give you. You know, you're lucky you're getting anything at all. It's good enough for you, right? So like, this is just, I think that this is what sets off the alarm bells in everybody's head. They're like, wait, why would you ever describe anything this way? That, like, there is no way, in no other circumstance in life would you ever listen to somebody say something like this and then go, well, okay, right? No, you'd be like, wait a minute. What are you hiding here? Like, why am I so, no, make somebody else accept the crappy one. I want the good one. You know, if it costs the same, give me the good one. Somebody else should take the crappy one. Don't give me the attitude that I should just be quiet and take whatever and just be happy for whatever I'm given. That's ridiculous. So we have a real problem here. People think that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is worse. I'm going to admit to you, I thought it was worse. I actually thought, man, if I get offered this terrible vaccine, I'm just going to get out of line. I'm going to, I'll be waiting in line. I'm going to ask somebody as they're coming out, hey, which one are they giving in there? And then if they say, well, they're giving the Johnson & Johnson, I'm going to say, whoa, not for me, man. And my strategy was to get out of line, go home, and then, get on the web and try and register for a different shot. Now, keep in mind, I'm not eligible to get a shot yet. So, but I'm predicting that by the time they get around to inoculating the cattle like me, there will probably be a lot of vaccines available. So I figure, oh, you know what, if I have to wait a week, but, that it increases my resistance by 30%, we're not going to get this shot every month, right? Like we may have to live with this shot. We don't know yet. We might need another shot in 8 months. We might need it in a year, might need it in 2 years. We might not get another shot for 3 years. Who knows? There's just a lot about this pandemic and about these vaccines that we just don't know. You can't recreate time in a laboratory. In most cases, I know physicists are going to say, oh, no, you can. All right, but for this, we can't. We have to observe what it does in a population. And so I'm thinking like, man, would I want to live with 1/3 less resistance, maybe for 2 years, probably at least a year. My guess would be this might be like a flu vax where we get a different one every year. And, the reality is that with vaccines, sometimes your immunity can decline over time. Not always. And sometimes your immunity lasts a long time, like a tetanus shot. You get that and, lasts 10 years or something. But for something like this, we just don't know. And so it's not a question of being this much less resistant for a short period of time. It could mean being this much less resistant for a long amount of time. So looking at this and then looking at these hideously bad answers that the experts are giving us, that's where I was. I decided I am not taking J&J Vax. I'll wait for a good one. Okay, so then I started digging, like, is this really true? And really what I was doing was I was digging in to try and support my position, right? That's the way humans are. I consider myself a man of science, but let's be honest. What most people do is they kind of grab a position, shooting from the hip, and then they start looking for evidence that supports their position, right? And we call that confirmation bias. So the difficulty there is that you might not look at evidence that doesn't support your position. That is where, I'm not trying to congratulate myself, but when I am examining an issue, I want to see all the evidence. I know everybody claims that. Maybe I'm as delusional as everybody else. But as I examine this issue, I want to see all the evidence both ways. I want to see the stuff that supports my position, and I want to see the stuff that does not support my position. Well, so I start digging, and all right, so the first thing they said was, well, if you look at the US only numbers, which makes sense because some of the places that they deployed their vaccine, they picked truly the worst places because they wanted to see, like, how's this going to do against the variants that are coming out, these mutations that are showing up in COVID. So they deliberately picked populations to test the vaccine on during the trials that were in very challenging locations. And so I thought, yeah, it's reasonable. What about just the U.S. number only? Because for the most part, we don't have the mutations that much in the U.S. So, and then the U.S. number only brings it up to 72%. So why would the doctors say, if you look at just the U.S. numbers, this will bring this much closer to the 94 or 95% of the mRNA vax? Again, you don't have to be some sort of math genius, a person who's passed advanced doctoral statistics. You don't have to be a person like that to see that, I guess it brings it closer, right? Like closer than 66%, but this isn't close. This means it's 7 out of 10 times you're protected, right? Roughly. And this means that 19 out of 20 times you're protected, which, if you look at this the other way, this means that 3 out of 10 times you're not protected. Okay, and whoops, I lost my 3. And then here, this means that one out of 20 times you're not protected. I mean, again, you don't have to be some math genius. I work with all kinds of math geniuses, man. We get them from all over the world. We get like the smartest math people from all over the world where I work. But you don't need that level of computational ability to figure out that I'd much rather have a 1 in 20 shot at a bad outcome than a 3 in 10 shot at a bad outcome. So again, not good. Like the first things that I did digging really didn't support this assertion that I shouldn't worry. In fact, it reaffirmed that I should worry. I actually got extra worried. I'm like, man, maybe I don't even want to be in the same building as these terrible vaccines. Okay. Over time, though, I kept digging. What did I find? Now, the other things the experts will say is the Johnson & Johnson vax gets better over time. Well, okay, but they usually follow that up with, at a certain point, it becomes 100% effective at keeping you from dying or getting put in the hospital. Well, that doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's almost statistically impossible that I will die from COVID. And that's, depending on your age, so depending on your age and your health, this is most of the country. We're probably not going to get killed by COVID. And also statistically, based on my age and health, it's very, 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 very unlikely I'll be hospitalized. So why would I even get vaccinated at all? 2 reasons. One is long hauler. So this is where people get COVID and then they just kind of have really bad health problems afterwards, including cognitive problems. I mean, their brain ain't working right. And this just kind of continues. So I really don't want this. I don't want these long hauler symptoms. Now, not a lot of good scientific work has been done on long hauler, but this is one of those things where the consequences are so catastrophic that I don't even want any chance that this could happen. But the other one is herd immunity. I want to get vaxxed so COVID goes away, right? So like the more of us that get vaccinated, then the more herd immunity we're getting. Well, if these are 95% effective at keeping me from getting it, and there's only 72, this kind of implies that this makes it more likely that I'll give it to somebody, right? Like if I get it, if there's a 30% chance I'll get it, 28% chance that I'll get it, then my chances of giving it to somebody are greater too. I'm not building a very good case for this. Now, here's where things started to change, though. So again, let's revisit this statement. The J&J vax gets better over time. Here, I'm looking at this study from New England Journal of Medicine published this. Durability of responses after SARS-CoV-2, the mRNA 1273 vax. This is the not the Pfizer, it's the Moderna vax. And here, if we look at figure 1, here's what happens is you get your initial vaccination, so you have like no antibodies, right? Like this is what it's showing. And then your immune response increases. And then it sort of starts leveling off. Like you can sort of see this in the stats here. These are just measuring different things related to biological functions that you're doing that are related to immunity. And so basically it's like an increase, and then it sort of either slows down or levels off, whatever. And then you get the second dose, and then your immunity goes even higher. And so you reach your peak immunity here like a week or 2 after your second dose. Okay? And that's, look, I'm not even going to pretend that I understand everything about these charts. That's my main takeaway. Now, the other thing to remember is that antibodies, it's not like a 1-to-1 correlation with immunity. It's not like 2 more antibodies means you get X% more immune. Antibodies are just sort of, they are very directly related to immunity, but there's a certain point where you just have enough antibodies where getting more antibodies doesn't matter, right? And like increasing the number of antibodies may or may not matter, but in general, the more antibodies you have, the better off you are. So what we see here is that you get an awesome number of antibodies with the mRNA vaxes. It peaks a week or two after your second dose. Then it levels off and starts to decline. Now, declining again doesn't necessarily mean that it's no longer effective at protecting you. Remember, what might be happening here is you have way more antibodies than you need in order to be protected, and then as it declines, you're still fully protected until you get to a certain threshold, and then you'll be less protective. But this is the way those things behave. So the most resistant you're going to be to the disease is going to be a week or two after you get your shot. So that's the way these things are working so far, right? And these are just phenomenally good vaccines. I mean, holy cow. I think everybody was a little bit stunned at how great these vaccines are. These are some of the best vaccines in the history of the world. I mean, just this mRNA technology is just a gift to mankind, and it's doing a great thing. So we've got these vaxes, but I mean, just generally speaking, nobody knows how long this is going to last. How long will it be until these decline to the point where you're going to need another shot? Nobody really knows. I've heard different numbers thrown out. Some of them, though, are as low as 8 months. You'll just have to do your own research. But for the purpose of this discussion, it's just enough to know that you get your peak immunity, or at least the peak antibody levels, a week or two after your second dose. What about Johnson & Johnson? So this I got from the interim results of the phase 1 and 2A trials. And this is figure 2. So here they're showing, and they're just comparing like high doses, low doses, these things versus placebo. They're just doing these over, comparing them over all sorts of things. What they all show though, and they ran this out. So here would be day 1. Then day 57, this is the number where when they're saying no deaths or hospitalizations, usually day 59, so here. So with placebo, like there's just, it doesn't do anything, right? And so when they compared low dose and placebo, what you're seeing is, they give you the injection, right? And then kind of with the low dose, it sort of peaks here around day 57, declines. And then here, it's increasing with high, and then with high dosage, it's increasing. With high dose, it's increasing, right? And so Johnson & Johnson's testing a lot of things here. Right now, they've got the single shot, right? And so, and these are just different cohorts, cohort 1A. So like here, low dose and then followed up by placebo. And basically, here's the thing. It's increasing even at day 71. So depending on the formulation, right, and I can't find the chart for the phase 3. It's not that easy to find information. But the J&J shows evidence of increasing antibodies at day 71, and keep in mind, like, there's only been so much time that's passed since these things happened. So we're going to know more of this over time. But that 72% effective in the U.S., that's at day 28. So let me just double check that. I don't want to put out any bad information here. So here's an article that's not really very supportive, right? It's 60% effective. It's a weapon, but not a knockout. But 66% effective at preventing moderate to severe disease 28 days after vaccination. So when you do just the U.S. cohort, it's 72% effective in the U.S. All right, well, why does that matter? Well, the Moderna and Pfizer vaxes, one of them is 14 days after the second dose, and the other one 7 days after the second dose. That's when those things become 94 and 95% effective. So second dose is after 28 days or 30 days, something like that. So I don't know. We're talking like, 30 to 40 days, right? Well, if we took the mRNA vaxes at day 28, they would be something less than this, right? So day 28, and again, based on that chart that I just showed you, I'll see if I can find it. Based on this chart, day 28 is not really a great day to do this, right? Like, we're still gaining antibodies after day 28. Like here, it's day 29. Now, you may wonder, why aren't there ways to just compare these things directly? Like, why can't we compare them all at day 29 or all at day 28? Why do they use different dates? The reason is, with clinical trials, you get to design your own clinical trial. And then you submit it to the FDA for approval, and the FDA says, yeah, that looks like a reasonable clinical trial to me. There's not like just one blanket clinical trial that's used for every kind of medicine, because every kind of medicine is at least a little bit different. So the manufacturers get to design their own trials. So my personal interpretation of this is that if we're talking about this thing being 72% effective here, well, how effective is it when we have this number of antibodies, when we have more antibodies in our system? We may clear some hurdle, and then at least based on what I can understand from a layman's standpoint, 72% effective is really a deceptive number. It's almost certainly more effective than this. We just don't know how much more effective. So why would J&J do it this way? Well, they did it this way because the government gave them a big bunch of money and said, hey, look, we need you to develop a vaccine, and if you develop it, we'll buy 100 million. We'll buy 100 million vaccines if it's good. And so J&J said, well, what's good? And they said, good is 60% effective against preventing death and hospitalizations. So that's what J&J focused on. They wanted to get that order and get this vaccine out to the street as soon as possible, so they met the criteria that they were given. I mean, we're going to know more about these things over time. But right now, truly thousands of people are dying every day. So getting these things out onto the street is very important. So then this brings up another question. They keep saying that J&J is very effective at preventing death and hospitalization, right? And then they'll also talk about J&J effectiveness versus moderate and severe infection. Okay, but the mRNA vaxes, those numbers are against all symptomatic infections. So this is another problem, right? So like it's 72% effective, 72% effective against the worst kinds of COVID, right? Like the worst consequences of COVID. These are 94% and 95% effective against all kinds of COVID. Well, if you're like me, you're thinking, well, what are they hiding? Does this mean it's not effective against any other kind of COVID? No, it doesn't mean that at all. They didn't measure it against mild cases of COVID. Why? Because that wasn't the criteria they had to meet. We're going to know that information eventually. But just my personal opinion on this is that something that is effective against really bad results is probably more effective against milder cases. Does that make sense? Right? Like, if something protects you from getting hit by a car, will it protect you against an acorn that a squirrel throws at you? Right? Now, that may not be true. This is where I have to sit there and try and see what is a reasonable conclusion to draw when there's an absence of information. And that can be very dangerous. There's only so many conclusions that you can draw from an absence of information. As they say in science, an absence of information does not mean information, right? So what I would say is it's possible that the effectiveness against mild cases is better than effectiveness against severe cases, right? So, and again, if something protects you from a car crash, will it protect you from, will it protect you from an acorn that a squirrel throws at you? I mean, probably. Now, I won't say that this is definitely true, but if this is true, this would really, really impact the numbers. Here's how this works. Most infections are mild. So let's just, 80% of infections are mild, and then bad infections are 20%. All right, so because of this, if you include mild infections, you can make your numbers look better because it's going to deal with more cases, right? And let me show you how this works mathematically. So if there are 80% mild infections and then 20% bad infections, let's say that J&J is 72% effective against bad infections, right? And that it's 99% effective against mild infections. So the way this works is you go like this, and you go like this, and then you add them all together, and now it's 94% effective, right? So does everybody see how this could, the fact that J&J excluded these mild infections, if their vax is actually highly effective against mild infections, excluding these mild infections killed this number. So whereas the mRNA vaxes, they included these mild cases, right? The mild cases of COVID. So it's possible that maybe they're not as good at the bad cases. Now, again, this 72%, actually, it's like with Johnson & Johnson, it's actually 100% effective. So, this could be as low as 92% or something, right? So, again, this is just math nerd stuff, but this is where, again, thinking like, well, wait a minute, like what if, right? So now let's look at something else that might be sort of interesting here. So this was a chart that was put together by a guy who calls himself your local epidemiologist. He's just gathering all these statistics, and you'll recognize some of these numbers. They're the ones that I've been looking at. But there is a stat here for, where is it? Hold on just, okay. No, that's not it. There was one. Okay, here we go. Protection from severe disease. Pfizer is 90%. What? So Pfizer's only 90% effective against severe disease. Now, Moderna is 100%, but then Johnson & Johnson, one dose is 85%, and then 100% after day 49. So what this means is at day 28, it's 85, but after day 49, it's 100%. Remember, these are at like 40 days, 40-something days. So it's not really fair to compare the 28-day Johnson & Johnson stat to the 40-something day Pfizer and Moderna stat. And the other thing is, we know that after 40-something days, Pfizer and Moderna are flat and declining. Whereas up to 71 days, Johnson & Johnson's increasing. So if we go back to this now, this kind of supports my hypothesis here, right? So like if we look at the Pfizer's only 90% effective at severe cases. So that means that, whoops, oh dear Lord. It's my day off, so my brain's not there. So that means that in order to get like 94.5% effective, that means that they made up a lot of ground on the mild cases, meaning that necessarily their effectiveness against bad cases had to be lower than their effectiveness against mild cases. This is where I'm just going to tell you, I'm not a biologist. Don't take this as gospel. I'm just trying to fill in the blanks from the standpoint of a layman who is concerned, right? Like you are probably concerned. We don't want to take a vaccine that's inferior. But when I add this all together, what I see is that, first off, the verbiage about effective against hospitalization and death, I know that they think that that's a selling point, like I should be excited about that, but it sounds like they're jobbing you, right? It sounds like they are trying to hustle you. The reality is, the reason that they say that is that Johnson & Johnson never conducted clinical trials to see about mild cases of COVID. Because why? Mild cases of COVID would not have shut down the economy, right? If all we got were mild cases. So, maybe they should have looked at them and they could have pumped their numbers up much bigger. The J&J trial was over many countries. And again, some of the worst parts of the world. Well, I won't, it makes it sound like I'm making a value judgment about the place. But as far as the diseases, health systems, things like that, places where it was hard. I mean, these guys did not pick the easy route for their trial. They actually chose challenging ways to get their clinical trials done. So, number one, that is no longer a concern to me. I actually applaud J&J for kind of going the hard route on this one. And then secondly, difference in percentage. So what do we know? What do we know that will make me feel like that's not a big deal? Well, the first thing we know is that the percentage was taken at 28 days. Now, again, let's go back to this chart. Its effectiveness against severe disease at 28 days was 85%, but then 100% at day 49. So we know that for severe disease, that difference between going from 28 days to day 49, 28 to 49 days, increased its effectiveness against severe disease. Now, does that mean that it increased its effectiveness against mild disease? I mean, that doesn't prove it definitively, but it seems reasonable to say that it would, right? That if they had done this at 49 days, based on this, it's likely that their effectiveness the number would have been higher. And then we see again, based on some of the other illustrations, that it increased antibody protection all the way up to day 71. For me personally, this is enough to say that I think that this vaccine is likely to be as effective as the mRNA vaxes. In fact, there's kind of reason to believe it might be better, because we know that the mRNA vaxes hit a peak and then they start to decline. The J&J, we haven't really seen where it starts to decline yet. It just keeps trucking. So, the other thing is, stats, they favored the mRNA because they were taken after a second shot. Right? So the 66% number, or in the US it's 72%, right? So the US number would be 72%. The actual number is probably higher than that, right? And so these were taken after a second shot, which means that your body just had more time even to react to the first shot and continue to build antibodies, and then you got the second shot. So the apples to apples here would have probably been a 49-day snapshot, not a 28-day snapshot. Again, why didn't Johnson & Johnson give us that? They're doing all this on the fly. All this information is going to come out later. So the reality is that the Johnson & Johnson vax really has the benefits of a two-vax protocol, right? Except you don't have to get the second shot. So with the mRNA stuff, your immunity goes up, and then you get your second shot, and your immunity goes up, and then it tails off, right? With the Johnson & Johnson, your immunity just kind of keeps going up. All the way to day 71. We know that it seems to keep going. And my guess would be maybe beyond. So this 94, 95% effective overall, that might be a ceiling. That might just be as good as any vaccine can get. But we know that the other vaccines won't get higher. It's not impossible. Johnson & Johnson might actually do better than that. We don't know, though. So again, just be careful about trying to extract information from lack of information. But it's not impossible. Johnson & Johnson might be the best vaccine of the bunch, and you only have to take it once. Now, last thing that I'm going to throw into this mix is that Johnson & Johnson's testing two other things right now. So they did the single shot because, again, time is an issue here. You can't duplicate that in a laboratory. They're testing two other things. This is my understanding, is they're testing a two-shot. And they're testing the one shot that they did now, plus a booster. So the immunity that you're getting from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is, again, all I feel comfortable saying is that it's probably more than 72%. My personal belief is probably much higher. Because, I mean, it was 72% for the U.S. population at 28 days. And again, antibody production really keeps going. But let's say that we discover that it peaks out at, I don't know, 85%. That is just a number I'm picking. There's no scientific basis for it. But there are two other things that they can do to boost that immunity. You can get a second vax. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, they are talking about boosters for variants, but really with that, all the good news is already on the table. That's it. You're going to hit 94, 95% immunity, then your antibody is going to start declining, and eventually you're going to need a new set of shots. But Johnson & Johnson has a couple ways that if for some reason they determine that these results are disappointing, that you can actually get increased immunity. I started this saying that Johnson & Johnson was so inferior that I would avoid getting it. And now I actually want the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. If I get something other than the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, I'm going to be disappointed. Now, if I get the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, I'm also going to, or if I get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, part of me is also going to go, well, maybe the Pfizer or the Moderna was better, right? So, like, regardless of what I get, I can't eliminate all doubt that the other ones might be better. But when you're in this spot, you really need to consider that this basically means that everything you're looking at is effectively tied for first place. So, I mean, the bottom line is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is actually what the doctors are saying. The doctors are saying the right thing about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine overall, which is that it's good and there's no reason to prefer one of the other vaccines over it, and that you should get the first vaccine that you're offered. That part of their messaging is on point. After hours and hours of looking into this myself, that's where I am with this. What they need to realize is they need to do a better job of explaining why that's true, right? And they're not doing a good job of that, and that's leading people to believe that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine isn't very good. When the reality is, I would actually probably rather have Johnson & Johnson right now. So my personal opinion is that there's a strong possibility that just the one shot of J&J, if you give it enough time, like if they ran this thing instead of 71 days, that you ran it out to 90 days or 120 days, that you may be looking at 94, 95% effectiveness. Now, again, I'm not a health professional, so that's just a matter of personal opinion, but I think that that's possible. I think that 94, 95 might be something, it might represent something like an upper limit. So these things will get you there, and then there's not going to be a way to push past that. But If I'm wrong, which I could totally be, there are two other bites at the apple that we can take that can increase the effectiveness of the vaccine. So all of that combined, I think the Johnson & Johnson is the superior vax. But regardless of what I'm offered, I'm going to take it. I think we are very fortunate that we have three excellent vaccines. Where we're not fortunate is that in the United States, we're viewing this as two excellent vaccines and one kind of okay vaccine that is minimally acceptable. When, if you dig into it, the evidence doesn't really bear that out. So that's my opinion. Don't take any of this as healthcare advice. Do your own research on it. Satisfy your own curiosity. Figure out if this stuff makes sense. Challenge these ideas. If you think I'm entirely full of crap, post it in the comments. Maybe I am. I'm not a doctor. So, and I'm not pretending to be, and nor am I claiming that I have any expertise in this field. What I would tell you is, listen to your doctor. And what do your doctors tell you? Your doctors tell you to get the first vaccine you can get because they're all great. That's what every doctor in America is saying right now. Get the first vaccine offered to you. They're all great. And so it doesn't mean that they're all the same. In small ways, some may be better than others, but they're all great vaccines. And the doctors are saying you can't go wrong with any one of them. So get the first one you can get. So, but if you're like me, a skeptical person that doesn't necessarily believe your doctor just because he or she is a doctor and tells you to do something, dig into it. Let me know what you think. So stay healthy, everybody. Avoid COVID. Get your vaccine. Let's get this country open back up. I'm so sick of all this. I'm just ready to puke. So let's get this thing over. Let's all get healthy and let's get life back to normal. But I have no qualms about the J&J vaccine. In fact, as of right now, I'd kind of rather have that than any of the others.